The morning sun cast long shadows across the marble floors of Valdoria's royal palace as Lady Eleanor Ashworth hurried through the ornate corridors, her arms laden with silk gowns destined for the Queen's chambers. Her soft-soled slippers made barely a whisper against the polished stone, a sound as unremarkable as her presence itself. At 22, Eleanor had mastered the art of invisibility within the most visible court in the kingdom. While other ladies-in-waiting preened and positioned themselves for advantageous marriages, she found solace in the shadows, observing the intricate dance of politics and romance from afar. Her chestnut hair, always neatly braided and tucked beneath a modest cap, caught no one's attention. Her dove-grey dresses, while well-made, were designed for practicality rather than attraction. "Elena, there you are," Queen Isabella's melodious voice called from her private sitting room. The Queen, a woman of 45 with silver threading through her golden hair, looked up from her correspondence with genuine warmth. Unlike most of the court, Queen Isabella had always treated Elena with kindness rather than indifference. "Your Majesty," Elena curtsied gracefully, setting the gowns carefully on the velvet-upholstered chair. Lady Margaret's seamstresses completed the alterations for tonight's ball, the Royal Harvest Ball. Elena's stomach tightened at the thought. The most prestigious social event of the year, where unmarried nobles displayed themselves like peacocks, hoping to catch the eye of wealthy suitors, or in the wildest dreams, the Crown Prince himself. "Magnificent work, as always," the Queen murmured, running her fingers over the intricate beadwork of a sapphire blue gown. "And what of your own preparations, dear Elena? Surely you've selected something beautiful for tonight?" Elena's cheeks flushed pink. I have a suitable dress, Your Majesty. Nothing elaborate. I expect to spend most of the evening attending to your needs." Queen Isabella's expression softened with something resembling maternal concern. "Eleanor, you are 22 years old, and from a respectable house, albeit modest. You should be dancing, laughing, perhaps even catching the attention of a worthy gentleman. Your father's debts don't define your worth." The mention of her family's financial struggles sent a familiar pang through Eleanor's chest. The Ashworth name, once prosperous, had been nearly destroyed by her late father's gambling debts. Only the Queen's charity had secured Elena's position at court, saving her family from complete ruin. "I am content with my position, Your Majesty," Elena replied quietly. "Service to the crown is honor enough." Before the Queen could respond, a commotion in the hallway drew their attention. Through the open doorway they glimpsed Crown Prince Alexander striding past, his military boots clicking authoritatively against the marble. Even from a distance, his presence commanded attention. Tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to see everything, Elena instinctively stepped back, deeper into the shadows of the room. She had served at court for 3 years, and though she had observed the prince countless times, she doubted he had ever truly noticed her. Why would he? He was destined to marry a princess from a neighboring kingdom or a duke's daughter with substantial dowry, not a debt-ridden minor noble's daughter who mended the Queen's stockings. "Alexander seems troubled lately," Queen Isabella observed, watching her son disappear around the corner. "The pressure from the council to announce his betrothal grows stronger each day. Tonight's ball is essentially a parade of potential brides." Elena nodded sympathetically, though she couldn't imagine the burden of such expectations. Her own future seemed simple by comparison. Remain in service until the Queen no longer needed her, perhaps eventually marry a merchant or lower-ranking official if she was fortunate. As the afternoon progressed, the palace buzzed with preparation. Servants polished every surface until it gleamed. Florists arranged elaborate displays of autumn flowers, and the kitchen staff labored over a feast that would feed 300 of the kingdom's most influential nobles. Elena spent the day tending to last-minute alterations and helping other ladies-in-waiting prepare for their grand entrances. She listened to their excited chatter about which lord might ask them to dance, which gown would catch the most attention, and whether the prince himself might notice them. "Did you see Lady Catherine's emerald necklace?" whispered Lady Margaret, a duke's daughter with honey-coloured curls. "It's worth more than most people's houses. Surely the prince will notice her tonight." "Lady Victoria has the advantage of beauty and her father's shipping fortune," countered Lady Anne, adjusting her rouge. "I heard she's already had 3 private audiences with the Queen." Eleanor continued her work silently, pinning a loose hem on Lady Margaret's ball gown. She had learned that invisibility came with the unexpected benefit of overhearing countless secrets. The ladies spoke around her as if she were merely another piece of furniture. As evening approached, Eleanor finally retreated to her small chamber on the servants' floor to prepare herself. Her quarters were modest: a narrow bed, a simple writing desk, and a wardrobe containing her few possessions. From the bottom drawer, she withdrew her ball gown, a deep forest green dress that had belonged to her mother. The fabric was still beautiful, though the style was several seasons old. Eleanor had carefully updated it with new ribbons and had let out the bodice to accommodate her more mature figure. In the wavering candlelight, she almost looked like she belonged among the nobility. Almost. Standing before her small mirror, Elena barely recognized herself. The green brought out the amber flecks in her brown eyes, and without her servant's cap, her chestnut hair fell in soft waves around her shoulders. For just a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it might feel like to be noticed, to have someone look at her with interest rather than looking through her entirely. But dreams were dangerous luxuries she couldn't afford. The grand ballroom of Valdoria Palace had been transformed into a glittering wonderland of gold and amber, reflecting the autumn harvest theme. Hundreds of candles cast a warm glow over the assembled nobility, their light dancing across silk gowns and polished jewels. The orchestra, positioned on a raised platform decorated with wreaths of oak leaves and copper-colored roses, filled the vast space with elegant melodies. Eleanor entered through the servants' corridor, as was appropriate for her station. She had intended to find a discreet corner from which to observe the evening's proceedings and remain available should Queen Isabella require assistance. However, the sheer magnificence of the scene made her pause in the doorway. Never had she seen the ballroom from this perspective, as a guest rather than a servant hurrying through with linens or messages. The vaulted ceiling, painted with scenes of Valdoria's founding, seemed to stretch infinitely above the swirling dancers. Crystal chandeliers cast rainbow prisms across the walls, and the polished marble floor reflected the elegant movements of the couples below. "Lady Elena!" A surprised voice made her turn. Lord Geoffrey Hartwell, a kind man in his 40s who served as the royal treasurer, stood beside her with a gentle smile. "I hardly recognized you. You look absolutely lovely tonight." Heat rose to Elena's cheeks. "Thank you, Lord Geoffrey, you're very kind." "Nonsense, I speak only truth. That color is particularly becoming on you." His eyes held genuine warmth. "I don't suppose you might honor me with a dance later this evening?" Before Elena could respond, a fanfare announced the arrival of the royal family. The crowd parted as King Edmund, Queen Isabella, and Crown Prince Alexander made their entrance. The king, dignified despite his advancing years, nodded graciously to his guests. Queen Isabella was resplendent in midnight blue silk, but it was Prince Alexander who commanded every eye in the room. He wore a formal military uniform of deep navy, gold braiding catching the candlelight with every movement. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and those penetrating blue eyes surveyed the assembly with the calculating gaze of a born leader. Yet Elena detected something else in his expression, a weariness that spoke of duty weighing heavily upon strong shoulders. "Presenting the eligible ladies of the court," announced the herald, and Elena watched as a parade of the kingdom's most beautiful and wealthy young women curtsied before the prince. Lady Catherine, glittering in emeralds and diamonds; Lady Victoria, ethereal in pale pink silk; Lady Rosalind, commanding attention in deep burgundy velvet. Each one was everything Elena was not: confident, radiant, socially prominent. They smiled with the practiced ease of women who had never doubted their place in the world. Elena found herself retreating further into the shadows, content to observe the elaborate courtship ritual from afar. She had no business among such elevated company. The dancing began, and Elena watched as Prince Alexander dutifully partnered with Lady Catherine for the opening waltz. They moved with practiced precision across the floor, her emerald gown creating a striking contrast against his dark uniform. The court watched with approval. Here was a suitable match, advantageous for all concerned. Yet as Eleanor observed more closely, she noticed something others seemed to miss. The prince's smile never reached his eyes. His conversation with his partner appeared stilted, formal. When the music ended, he bowed correctly but without warmth before moving on to his next obligatory dance. "He looks miserable," Lord Geoffrey murmured beside her, having followed her gaze. "Poor lad. I remember when he was young, so full of life and curiosity. The crown has aged him beyond his 28 years. Elena nodded, feeling an unexpected pang of sympathy for the man who seemed to have everything. What must it be like, she wondered, to have your entire future decided by political advantage rather than personal choice? The evening progressed with Eleanor remaining in the periphery, accepting dances with Lord Geoffrey and a few other older gentlemen who took pity on her obvious wallflower status. She was grateful for their kindness, though she couldn't help but notice how the younger, more eligible men's eyes slid past her, as if she were transparent. It was during the fourth waltz that everything changed. Elena had just declined another invitation from Lord Geoffrey, insisting he should dance with someone more deserving of attention, when she became aware of a presence beside her. She turned, expecting perhaps one of the Queen's other attendants, and found herself looking up into the intense blue eyes of Crown Prince Alexander himself. Time seemed to stop. The music, the laughter, the rustle of silk gowns, all of it faded into background noise as Elena stared up at the man she had observed from afar for 3 years but had never spoken to directly. "Lady Elena Ashworth," he said, his voice deep and surprisingly warm. "Would you do me the honor of this dance?" Elena's mind went blank. Surely she had misheard. Surely this was some sort of mistake. She glanced around frantically, certain he must be addressing someone behind her, but found only empty space. Your Highness, she stammered, acutely aware that conversations were dying around them, as the court noticed this unprecedented interaction. "Please," Prince Alexander said, extending his gloved hand with a smile that, for the first time that evening, reached his eyes. "I would be grateful for your company." With trembling fingers, Elena placed her hand in his and allowed him to lead her onto the dance floor. She was dimly aware of the whispers that followed in their wake, the shocked expressions of the ladies who had been presented earlier, the confused murmurs of the nobility trying to understand why their prince was dancing with a servant. But as Alexander's arm encircled her waist and they began to move to the music, everything else ceased to matter. He was an excellent dancer, leading her with such skill that her own modest abilities seemed elevated. More surprisingly, he was looking at her, truly looking at her, as if she were the only person in the room. "You're wondering why I asked you to dance," he said softly, his breath warm against her ear as they turned. "The thought had occurred to me, Your Highness," Elena managed, proud that her voice remained steady despite her racing heart. "Please, call me Alexander, at least for the duration of this waltz." His smile was boyish, transforming his usually serious face. "And I asked because you're the only person here tonight who isn't trying to impress me." Eleanor looked up at him in surprise. "I'm afraid I don't understand." "You're genuine," he explained as they moved through the intricate steps. "I've spent the evening making polite conversation with ladies who agree with everything I say, who laugh at jokes that aren't funny, who see only a crown when they look at me. But you've been watching everyone with such compassion, such intelligence. When Lord Geoffrey spoke with you, your smile was real. When you declined his repeated invitations, it was from kindness, not calculation. You were watching me." The words slipped out before Eleanor could stop them. Alexander's laugh was low and rich. "Elena, I've been watching you for months. You move through the court like a guardian angel, caring for everyone but yourself. You mend the Queen's belongings as if they were precious treasures. You listen to the other ladies' problems with genuine concern. You never gossip or scheme or manipulate. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Elena felt as though she were floating. This couldn't be real. Men like Alexander didn't notice women like her, let alone observe them for months. As the waltz drew to a close, Elena expected him to bow politely and move on to his next obligation. Instead, Alexander retained his hold on her hand. "Would you honor me with another dance?" he asked. The ballroom had gone almost silent, all attention focused on this unprecedented development. Eleanor was acutely aware of Lady Catherine's furious expression, of the Queen's shocked but pleased face, of the whispers growing louder by the moment. "Your Highness, Alexander," she corrected at his gentle look. "People are staring. This isn't proper protocol." "Let them stare," he said firmly. "For once in my life I want to dance with someone who sees me as a man rather than a political alliance. Will you grant me that gift?" Looking into his earnest eyes, Eleanor found herself nodding before her rational mind could object, and so they danced again, and then again, as the rest of the court watched in stunned silence, and Eleanor's carefully ordered world began to crumble and rebuild itself around the impossible reality of being noticed, truly noticed by the Crown Prince of Valdoria. The morning after the royal harvest ball arrived with the force of a thunderstorm, though the sky above Valdoria Palace remained deceptively clear. Eleanor woke before dawn in her small chamber, her dreams still filled with the memory of strong arms guiding her across the ballroom floor, and blue eyes that had looked at her as if she mattered. For a moment, lying in the grey pre-dawn light, she allowed herself to believe it had all been real. Then reality crashed back with the weight of a crown's expectations, and Elena rose quickly to begin her duties, hoping that work might quiet the wild beating of her heart. She had barely finished dressing when urgent knocking rattled her door. "Lady Elena," came the sharp voice of Mrs. Pemberton, the head housekeeper. "The Queen requests your immediate presence in her private chambers." Elena's stomach dropped. Queen Isabella's tone threw Mrs. Pemberton suggested this was not a routine morning summons. Smoothing her grey servant's dress and ensuring her hair was properly pinned, Elena hurried through the maze of corridors to the royal quarters. She found Queen Isabella pacing before the tall windows of her sitting room, still in her morning robe, her usually perfect composure showing cracks of anxiety. The Queen turned as Elena entered, and her expression softened with something between concern and curiosity. "Eleanor, dear child, please sit." The Queen gestured to a silk-upholstered chair. "We must discuss what happened last evening." "Your Majesty, if I overstepped—" "You did nothing wrong," Queen Isabella interrupted gently, settling into the chair opposite Elena. "But I fear you may not understand the implications of what transpired. When my son chooses to dance exclusively with one lady at the most important social event of the season, it sends a very specific message to the court and to neighboring kingdoms." Elena's hands twisted in her lap. "I tried to discourage his attention, Your Majesty. I knew it wasn't proper." "Oh, my dear Elena." The Queen's smile was sad but warm. "Alexander is 28 years old and will be king. When he sets his mind to something, discouragement from a lady-in-waiting will hardly deter him." She paused, studying Elena's face carefully. "The question is, what are your feelings toward my son?" The directness of the question left Elena speechless. How could she explain that 3 dances had awakened something she hadn't known existed within her, that for the first time in her life she had felt truly seen, truly valued, that even now, remembering the warmth in Alexander's voice when he spoke her name, made her pulse quicken? He was very kind to me, Your Majesty, more than I deserved." "Eleanor," the Queen leaned forward, her voice gentle but firm. "I need you to understand something. The court is in an uproar this morning. Lady Catherine's father is demanding an explanation. The Venetian ambassador is questioning whether the trade agreements tied to Alexander's potential betrothal to Princess Sophia are still valid. 3 different nobles have approached me asking about your family's lineage and dowry." Each word felt like a physical blow. Eleanor had known there would be consequences, but she hadn't fully grasped their scope. "I never intended—" "I know, dear child, but intentions matter little in court politics." The Queen rose and moved to her writing desk, withdrawing a sealed letter. "This arrived at dawn. It's from your mother." Eleanor's heart clenched. Her mother, living in genteel poverty in their small family estate, rarely corresponded unless there was urgent need. With trembling fingers, Elena broke the seal and read the brief message. "My dearest Elena, word travels swiftly, even to our quiet corner of the kingdom. The village is abuzz with talk of your dancing with the Crown Prince. I pray this letter finds you well, and that you understand the delicate position you now occupy. Remember that our family's honor, though tarnished by your father's debts, still demands dignity in all circumstances. Be careful, my child. The heights of court favor can become the depths of court exile with frightening speed. Your loving mother, Lady Margaret Ashworth." Eleanor set the letter down with shaking hands. Even her mother, isolated from court politics, understood what Eleanor was only beginning to comprehend. Her life had fundamentally changed overnight. "There's more," Queen Isabella said quietly, returning to her seat. "The Privy Council has requested an emergency session this afternoon. They wish to discuss the implications of Alexander's unprecedented behavior. They want me gone." It wasn't a question. Eleanor understood court dynamics well enough to know that her presence had become a political liability. "Some do," the Queen admitted, "but others are curious. Your family is noble, even if impoverished. Your behavior at court has been irreproachable for 3 years, and—" she smiled slightly. Alexander has never shown genuine interest in any lady before last evening. Some council members see opportunity where others see scandal. Before Elena could respond, the door burst open without ceremony. Crown Prince Alexander strode in, still wearing his morning riding clothes, his hair tousled from the wind. His eyes immediately found Elena, and his face softened with relief. "Mother, I heard you summoned Elena early this morning. I hope you haven't been filling her head with warnings about court politics." His tone was light, but Elena detected steel beneath the casual words. "Alexander, we need to discuss nothing that doesn't include Elena," he interrupted, moving to stand behind Elena's chair with protective authority. "She has every right to hear what concerns her future." Queen Isabella sighed. "Very well. Alexander, the council is in chaos. Lord Pemberton is suggesting that your behavior last evening was either a momentary lapse in judgment that should be quietly forgotten, or a deliberate slight to our allies that requires immediate diplomatic correction." "And what did you tell them?" Alexander's voice was dangerously quiet. "I told them that my son is not a boy to be managed, but a man capable of making his own decisions." The Queen's spine straightened with royal authority. "However, I also reminded them that those decisions have consequences beyond personal preference." Elena felt the weight of the moment crushing down upon her. She was trapped between her growing feelings for Alexander and the stark reality of their different worlds. Standing slowly, she turned to face both the Queen and the Prince, who had unknowingly turned her life upside down. "Your Majesty, Your Highness," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "Perhaps it would be best if I returned to my family's estate for a time. Allow the court to settle. Give the council space to focus on more important matters." "No." Alexander's response was immediate and firm. "I won't allow you to be driven away by political cowardice and social convention." "Alexander," Elena said softly, "I'm not being driven away. I'm trying to protect something precious before it can be destroyed by forces neither of us can control." For a moment, the three of them stood in silence, each understanding that they had reached a crossroads where every choice carried the weight of kingdoms and hearts alike. The Privy Council chamber had seen many heated debates throughout Valdoria's history, but few as charged as the one that commenced that afternoon. Eleanor, despite Alexander's protests, had not been permitted to attend. Instead, she paced the servants' quarters, her fellow ladies-in-waiting watching her with expressions ranging from sympathy to barely concealed jealousy. "I heard Lord Pemberton shouting from 3 corridors away," whispered Mary, one of the younger maids. "Something about impossible alliances and diplomatic disasters. Sir, Lady Catherine's father has threatened to withdraw his support for the new trade routes if the prince doesn't formally apologize for the slight to his daughter," added Sarah, her voice filled with the drama that servants thrived upon. Eleanor sank into a chair by the small window overlooking the palace gardens. Below she could see the autumn flowers that had decorated last night's ballroom, now wilting in their arrangements, a fitting metaphor for her brief moment of happiness. Eleanor. The quiet voice belonged to Lady Anne, one of the few among the Queen's attendants who had always treated Eleanor kindly. "Whatever happens in that council chamber, you should know that what I witnessed last night was genuine. The prince looked at you as if you were precious to him." Before Eleanor could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridor. The door opened to reveal Alexander, his formal court attire replaced by simple riding clothes, his face grim but determined. "Ladies, if you would excuse us," he said politely but firmly. The other women scattered like leaves before wind, leaving Elena alone with the man who had complicated her life beyond all recognition. "The council meeting didn't go well," she observed, reading the tension in his shoulders. "On the contrary, it went exactly as I expected." Alexander moved to the window beside her, his gaze fixed on the gardens below. "Lord Pemberton and his allies believe you are a distraction from my duty. Lady Catherine's father is demanding satisfaction for the perceived insult to his daughter. The Venetian ambassador has suggested that my behavior indicates Valdoria is not serious about the proposed marriage alliance with Princess Sophia." Elena's heart sank with each word. "And what did you tell them?" Alexander turned to face her, his blue eyes blazing with quiet intensity. "I told them that I am not a prize bull to be bartered for trade agreements, that my marriage, when it occurs, will be to a woman of my choosing, not theirs, and that any man who speaks disrespectfully of Lady Eleanor Ashworth will answer to me personally." "Alexander, you can't—" "I can, and I did." He knelt beside her chair, taking her hands in his larger, warmer ones. "Eleanor, I need you to understand something. Last night wasn't a whim or a moment of rebellion. I've been observing you for months because something about you called to me. Your kindness, your intelligence, the way you care for others without thought for yourself. When I held you in my arms on that dance floor, I felt complete. For the first time in my life, I wasn't Prince Alexander performing his duty. I was simply a man, dancing with the woman who had captured his heart." Eleanor's breath caught. "You can't mean that." "I've never meant anything more." His thumbs traced gentle circles on her hands. "I know the obstacles we face. I know the court will resist, that neighboring kingdoms will object, that my path to you is fraught with political complications. But I also know that a crown means nothing if I must wear it alone, married to duty rather than love." Tears Elena had been fighting all day finally spilled over. "Alexander, I'm nobody. A minor noble's daughter with no dowry, no political connections, no advantage to offer the crown. Your people deserve a queen who can bring strength to the kingdom, not one who brings only scandal." "My people deserve a king who leads with wisdom and compassion," Alexander countered. "How can I rule justly if I cannot even choose justly for my own heart? How can I make decisions for the kingdom's good if I allow fear and convention to make my most important decision for me?" He rose and began pacing the small room, his passion evident in every movement. "Eleanor, you speak of having nothing to offer, but you're wrong. You have 3 years of impeccable service to the crown. You have the trust and affection of my mother. You have the respect of every honest person at court. Most importantly, you have my heart, freely given and completely yours." "And if the council forbids it?" Elena asked quietly. "If they threaten to withdraw their support for your rule?" Alexander's smile was sharp and entirely royal. "Then they will discover that I am my father's son, and this kingdom has weathered greater storms than hurt feelings and political maneuvering. Elena, I won't lie to you. The path forward will be difficult. We'll face opposition, gossip, possibly even attempts at sabotage, but we'll face it together." Before Elena could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Queen Isabella entered, her expression unreadable. "Alexander, I've been looking for you. Lord Geoffrey wishes to speak with you privately." Her gaze shifted to Elena. "Elena, dear, might I have a word?" Alexander looked reluctant to leave, but his mother's tone brooked no argument. With a reassuring squeeze of Elena's hands, he departed, leaving the two women alone. Queen Isabella settled into the chair Alexander had vacated, her regal composure softening into something more maternal. "Eleanor, I must ask you a difficult question, and I need complete honesty." "Of course, Your Majesty." "Do you love my son?" The directness of the question left Eleanor momentarily speechless. Love? Was that what this overwhelming feeling was? This sense that Alexander's happiness had become more important than her own safety or comfort? Yes, she whispered. "God help me, I think I do." "Then you must also love him enough to consider what's best for him, even if it breaks your heart." Elena's stomach clenched. "You want me to refuse him? I want you to think clearly about what a future with Alexander would require." The Queen leaned forward, her voice gentle but urgent. "Eleanor, if you marry my son, you will become Queen of Valdoria. Every decision you make, every word you speak, every gesture will be scrutinized and judged. The court ladies who whisper behind your back now will become your subjects, some loyal, some plotting your downfall. Foreign dignitaries will test your knowledge, your composure, your worthiness to stand beside their crowned equals." Each word was like a stone added to the weight, already pressing on Elena's chest. "Your Majesty, I never presumed—" "But you must presume if you truly care for him." Queen Isabella's voice grew firm. "Elena, you are a lovely, intelligent, worthy young woman. But are you prepared to be a queen? Can you stand before a council of lords who think you beneath them and command their respect? Can you negotiate with foreign ambassadors who will try to manipulate you? Can you bear the loneliness of a crown, where every friendship is suspect and every kindness might mask ulterior motives?" Eleanor stared at her hands, the magnitude of what Alexander was truly offering finally becoming clear. He wasn't just proposing love, he was proposing to make her one of the most powerful women in the known world, with all the responsibility and isolation that entailed. "I don't know," she admitted quietly. "I truly don't know if I'm strong enough for what you describe." Queen Isabella's expression softened with sympathy. "Then perhaps, dear child, you have your answer. Love is not always enough, especially for those who wear crowns. Sometimes the greatest gift we can give those we love is the wisdom to know when to step aside. As the Queen's words settled over her like a shroud, Elena realized that the most difficult decision of her life was not whether she loved Alexander, but whether she loved him enough to save him from the scandal and weakness that marrying her might bring to the crown he was destined to wear. 3 days had passed since Queen Isabella's sobering conversation, and Elena had barely slept. She moved through her duties like a ghost, her mind constantly wrestling with the impossible choice before her. Alexander had respected her request for time to think, though she caught him watching her with growing concern whenever their paths crossed in the palace corridors. On the 4th morning, Elena made her decision. She rose before dawn and made her way to the palace chapel, a small, intimate space where she had often found solace during her 3 years of service. The morning light filtered through stained glass windows, casting jeweled patterns across the stone floor as Elena knelt before the altar, seeking strength for what she must do. "I thought I might find you here." Elena didn't need to turn to recognize Alexander's voice. She heard his footsteps approach, felt him kneel beside her on the cold stone floor. "You've been avoiding me," he said quietly, his voice carrying hurt, despite his attempt at lightness. "I've been thinking," Elena replied, still not meeting his eyes, "about everything your mother said, about what marrying me would mean for your reign, for the kingdom." "Elena, please, let me finish." She finally turned to face him, memorizing every detail of his beloved features. "Alexander, these past few days have taught me something important. I do love you. More than I thought possible, more than I ever imagined I could love anyone." His face brightened with hope, but Elena held up a gentle hand. "But loving you means wanting what's best for you, even when it destroys me." Her voice began to tremble. "Your mother is right. The court will never fully accept me. Foreign kingdoms will see your marriage to a debt-ridden minor noble as a sign of weakness. Every political challenge you face will be complicated by questions about your judgment in choosing an unsuitable wife." "Elena, you're not unsuitable. I'm not a princess with armies to offer, or a duchess with trade routes to secure, or even a wealthy merchant's daughter who could fill the royal treasury." Elena's tears finally began to fall. "I'm a servant, Alexander. A servant who foolishly allowed herself to dream above her station." Alexander's hands cupped her face, his thumbs gently wiping away her tears. "You're the woman I love. You're intelligent, kind, compassionate, strong. You've run this palace so efficiently that my mother depends on you completely. You've observed court politics for 3 years, with wisdom that would shame half the Privy Council. Eleanor, you are exactly the queen this kingdom needs. But not the queen they'll accept." Eleanor leaned into his touch for a moment, allowing herself one last taste of what might have been. "Alexander, I've written to my mother. I'm going home." The words hit him like a physical blow. "No, I forbid it." Despite her pain, Elena smiled at his imperious tone. "You can't forbid it, Your Highness. I'm not your subject in matters of the heart." "Then I'll come with you." The words tumbled out desperately. "I'll abdicate. We'll live quietly on your family's estate. I don't need a crown if I can't wear it beside you." "Alexander, stop." Eleanor's voice turned firm. "Listen to yourself. You would abandon your people, your duty, your destiny for me? How could I live with such a choice? How could I look at you in 10 years and not see the resentment in your eyes for what I cost you?" "You would never see resentment, because you're too honorable to show it, even to yourself." Eleanor stood, forcing herself to step away from his warmth. "Alexander, you were born to be king. I've watched you these past years, seen how you care for even the smallest concerns of your people. Valdoria needs you. They need your strength, your wisdom, your dedication. I won't be the selfish woman who steals their future king for her own happiness." Alexander rose as well, his face desperate. "Then what do you propose? That I marry some princess I don't love? That I spend my life performing duty while my heart remains with you?" Eleanor's smile was heartbreaking in its sadness. "I propose that you trust in the wisdom that made me love you in the first place. You will find someone worthy of both your heart and your crown, someone who can stand beside you as an equal, who can help you bear the burdens of rule instead of adding to them. There is no one else. There will be." Elena moved toward the chapel door, knowing that if she stayed much longer, her resolve would crumble. "Alexander, promise me something. Anything. Promise me you'll be the king I know you can be. Rule with justice and compassion. Find happiness, even if it's not with me." And remember that somewhere in a small manor house, a woman who loves you will spend every day praying for your well-being and the prosperity of your reign. Elena, please! But she was already walking away, her footsteps echoing in the empty chapel as she left behind the only man she would ever love. 6 months later, Crown Prince Alexander stood once again in the grand ballroom, this time for the annual spring equinox celebration. The same crystal chandeliers cast their rainbow light across the polished marble, and the same orchestra played elegant melodies for the dancing couples below. But everything had changed. Elena had returned to her family's estate as planned, though not to the quiet retirement she had envisioned. Word of her brief elevation at court had reached neighboring nobles, and she had received 3 marriage proposals from respectable gentlemen seeking a wife with court experience. She had politely declined them all, choosing instead to dedicate herself to managing her family's remaining lands and caring for her aging mother. Alexander had thrown himself into his royal duties with renewed intensity. He had successfully negotiated a new trade agreement that didn't require a marriage alliance, strengthened Valdoria's military defenses, and implemented several reforms that improved life for the kingdom's poorest citizens. The Privy Council grudgingly admitted that he had never been more focused or effective as a leader. He had also, to his mother's carefully concealed relief, begun paying polite attention to Lady Margaret Blackwood, the intelligent daughter of a neighboring duke. She was everything a future queen should be: educated, politically astute, beautiful, and wealthy. Their conversations were stimulating, their partnership at state functions seamless. She was not Eleanor. As Alexander danced the opening waltz with Lady Margaret, he found himself remembering another ball, another woman whose hand had fit perfectly in his. He wondered if Eleanor was well, if she was happy, if she ever thought of him during the long country evenings. "Your Highness?" Lady Margaret's gentle voice brought him back to the present. "You seem distracted this evening." "Forgive me, Lady Margaret. Affairs of state." The practiced lie came easily now. She smiled with understanding. "Of course. The burden of leadership must weigh heavily at times." Alexander nodded, but his thoughts remained with a woman who had loved him enough to save him from his own heart, and who had, in leaving, taught him the true meaning of sacrifice and duty. In her small manor house 200 miles away, Elena sat by her window, watching the spring rain fall on her mother's garden. She had heard through carefully neutral letters from Queen Isabella that Alexander was well, that he was considering marriage to a suitable lady, that his reign, when it came, would likely be both prosperous and wise. It was exactly what she had hoped for, and it broke her heart anew every time she thought of it. But sometimes, when the wind was just right and the evening light fell softly through her window, Eleanor allowed herself to remember 3 perfect dances and the impossible dream of being loved by a prince who had seen her true worth. It was a memory she would treasure for the rest of her life, even as she built a new future from the ashes of the love she had chosen to sacrifice for the good of a kingdom. Love, Elena had learned, was not always about holding on. Sometimes the truest love meant knowing when to let go.